to be regenerative. When I say that sustainability is only half the answer, I'm talking about that we have to continue to restrain ourselves, and that's what this represents, restrain ourselves from continuing to use things that are not whole and do not give us a healthy planet and a healthy species for us and others. That's a really important part. We must, however, begin to understand how living systems work. And that actually is a mental capacity which is not developed, it's not built in the schools, and I am sure it's not at Sloan either. We don't spend time, even if you study systems dynamics, do you study it with a process that is about systemic thinking? Do you learn to see it in the way that it's whole and working? So I believe these are the capacities we're going to have to add if we're going to make it to the kind of work that we need to do to really have a healthy planet. The way I'm holding these is more like you still are going to have to do problem solving, you still have to do the protection, but I want the mind that's working on it to be starting with a more evolutionary model. So in the Kingsford example, once they really started understanding what briquetting was like, and they regenerated their idea of the essence of what a briquette is, it started stripping away everything that didn't need to be there. And they were able to create closed systems. They were able to change the water. But when they were working only on the water part, they would have never gotten to the 90% reduction. They would have just gotten to less water, less heat. So having us begin to hold these and to particularly develop a thinking capacity. And I thought I'd just give you an outline here of what I think you have to hold mentally for this kind of thinking capacity. I call it developmental thinking. Do you know what the word developmental, the root of it, are any of you etymologists and like finding the roots of words? The word development, the middle of it is the key. It's about the veil. It really means to take the veil off. So if you're developing a person, it literally means to remove the veil from who they are and let them be themselves. So if you're in a process of developing yourself, you're trying to be more of who you are. Get you more out into the world. The same thing is true if you're looking at a forest. How do you let a forest be more of what it could be? We have the idea that we should not intervene in forests. I believe that we have to intervene more in forests, but we have to do it from a much more educated process. We actually have to understand the same way the native tribes in California understood and knew they were a part of nature. And we have to be able to engage with nature in a way we are more active in it and not just be less active. We have to right now be less active because everything we do makes it more of a mess. So we have to cut less trees. We don't actually understand the process that would create a healthier one. So we aren't used to thinking that way, right? Most of us are spending all our time trying to get people away from the forest, get them not to touch the forest. I believe we have to intervene more, not less. And we have to go but from an understanding. So that understanding comes from working on the essence of everything we look at. Can we build the mind that can see what it truly is, what it is trying to be, and how it is that we can help it be that, not by our paternalistic, anthropomorphic sense of humans are at the center of it, by understanding the whole. When the natives were working in the forests, in California primarily, the ones they studied, they were seeing themselves as a part of the system. They made baskets, they made food, but they knew they had to have the animals, they had to keep it whole for everyone. So I believe this learning to see the living systems part is a really important thing, and for humans to get more active in that process. And to remove the self-centric or the entity-centric. Now, the one thing I'm still watching every company I work with, it's very hard, and we'll check and see if this is true for you, is people tend to see sustainability for themselves at the center. What can they do? What can they change? What they can do less of? So when Walmart is looking at something, they're contracting with somebody changing upstream, right, the leverage that they've had. How is it that we begin to see ourselves as a part of a living dynamic system? And this is a mental process we have to change. We have to also, now this is the one that Carrie talked about that I'm actively involved in. I believe that in order to do this, we have to engage in personal development of ourselves. Are you required in school to write a personal development plan on how you're going to grow yourself to be a particular person and work on your being? Now, most people work on personal development plans in terms of functional skills, what my skill's going to be. But do they require you to work on the capacity of your consciousness? I'm not talking about your conscience, which is good, but your consciousness. Can you actually see how your thinking is affecting what you can conceive of? I work with businesses on the development of consciousness. Somebody asked me earlier, they let you do that? They love doing it because as they do it, they begin to see the kind of ideas that we're talking about here, so they can create that way beyond solutions. They can invent new processes that make money for them. It has their people be whole. This is the thing, Jason, you're talking about the people part, the community part, the education part, the employees part. That's the part that I will be doing with the Walmart teams, working with how it is you build the capacity of people to think so that they can become a part of figuring out how to make the whole system work. See, what else here is? Oh, there's one last story that I have to tell you. Elizabeth Sahtouris is an amazing, she calls herself an evolutionary biologist, and she tells this story to understand how systems people have to work and think. She says, can you imagine a conference being called of the parts of your body? So a meeting is called, and your liver is invited, and your kidneys are invited, and your heart is invited, and your lungs are invited. And they sit down and they say, we have some problems. We have a body that's sick. Yeah, it's not as healthy as it should be. And the liver says, well, you know, I'm the one that has the most problems, and so I should get most of the help. And it's more than willing to trade off the lungs. Or the heart says, you know, I'm not getting enough oxygen. I really need to get the lungs to do something different. Your body would never consider working in that way because it's one whole integrated process. But we work with nature as though we could separate all those pieces out. And we work with businesses as though we could separate them out. The challenge is how to get the mind that can see the working of that entire system and the working of the way the forest and the way I described the bears that work. How do we get our minds to learn to think that way? The last thing that I would like to share with you again is this idea of becoming more active human interventionists. Not just preventing less, but making sure we learn more. Making sure that each of us build the capacity to see things from what I call a value-adding process. This is another term. Do you learn about supply chain management here? So I think that supply chain management is one of the worst mental concepts you could ever create. Who'd have thought that, right? Supply chain management is an objectifying of something as separate from us. It's a process of creating an efficiency thing because what we do with supply chain is how to get it to do less. Until we can see that everything is flowing from earth to earth and it flows through some people and all the way out to the earth again, we can't create regenerative solutions. We can only create efficiency processes along the way. So what I ask you to do as business students is to invite into every process you're in the capacity building for the living systems thinking processes for the working of consciousness.